on deck. Ha ha! Wow, that's smart.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Why should the people listen to you?
Because I can speak with an English accent.
Man battle stations missile for WSRT. Spin up all missiles.
Welcome to yet another live edition of The Sub Vets. I'm Dave Bowman.
And I'm Eric Ryle from the Sub Vet.
And we are so glad to be here with each and every one of you on a Friday, which is kind of a little unusual, I guess. Hang on, I'm going to cut that off because it's not fading properly. So it's always every time we overcome one technical challenge, we face another one. Never ends. Good morning.
It is what it is.
How's the knee?
The knee, well, I was doing great. And I went into PT confident yesterday. And I said, man, look at this knee. Look at this flexibility. I've been knocking out the PT. She goes, we're going to kick it up a notch. I said, I'm ready. So I whimpered in pain all night last night. That's how that went.
Narrator. He was not ready.
I was not ready.
Well, we got another special guest today. This time from, as we would say, across the pond in Stratford-on-Avon. Do you know where that is, Eric? Do you know why that place is famous?
I'm sure I don't. And I'm trying to figure out how you do.
Where Shakespeare's from.
Of course you know that, Dave.
Ryan Ramsey.
Well, that's why you're an FTB and I'm a missile tech.
There you go. Ryan Ramsey joins us from merry old England this morning. Good morning, Ryan. How are you today?
I am good, thanks very much. It's coming towards the evening for us, so we've had a great day of weather in Stratford-on-Avon. Lots of people looking around and seeing where Shakespeare was born and all the plays that he wrote. So it's been all good.
Now, just so you know, it's beer time in England, so he's having. We are having coffee, or I'm having coffee. I don't know what Eric's drinking, but
I'm drinking water.
I don't drink water. Fish, you know what, in it. So,
so how you doing, Ryan? I mean, I'm glad you could come on the broadcast. It was kind of short notice. And
I'm good, thanks, and a pleasure for inviting me.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and who is Ryan Ramsey?
Yeah, who is Ryan Ramsey? It's probably what is Ryan Ramsey is easier to explain. Yeah. So in basic terms, I'm a veteran too. So I served in the Royal Navy for over 26 years in the submarine service. I was fortunate enough to be the captain of HMS Turbulent, which is an SSN or an SSGN in reality because I had Tomahawk missiles. I then went on to teach submarine captains as well on the course, which is called the Perisher course, which is a bit like your submarine command course out in the US. And probably two other things of point. I did 2 exchange programs, one with the Royal Netherlands Navy for 2 years, first guy to do that. And then I also spent 2 years with your great Navy up in ComSub Dovram 12 working for a guy called John Richardson.
Now I get the connection. Okay. Eric was trying to get me to look up John Richardson yesterday, and I was confused as to, okay, you worked with him. That's why all right. Now I get it. So tell me, oh boy, that's interesting. Tell me about you said the Norwegian Navy or Netherlands Navy. I kind of missed that.
Royal Netherlands Navy, the Dutch.
So that's, historically, that's kind of a raw area for you Brits, isn't it? Kind of, the English-Dutch, Anglo-Dutch conflicts there.
I think way back when, they bring that up a lot about how they managed to sail down the Thames and sink everything.
Right.
I would bring up about how we went up to Texel, which is the island just off Den Helder, and did the same to them, which they've conveniently forgotten about.
What was that experience like?
It's a works that way.
How was the Dutch Navy? What did you do with them?
It was amazing. I mean, so at the time it was a walrus class. This was 1992. I went out 92 to 95, and it was amazing because their submarines were so far ahead with technology and everything else. And they're brilliant submariners. I learned so much from them. I had to learn Dutch, which was great. So I spoke fluent Dutch by about 6 months into it. And incredible submariners, natural in what they did, and lifelong friends. So friends that are still my friends now.
You know, I got a question there when you said that you had to learn Dutch. In airplanes, English is the international language. Is that true in submarines, or do they speak their native Dutch and whatever on?
Oh,
yeah, well, they can. I mean, they could speak English easily enough, but that wasn't half of the point. Was you're supposed to you're an exchange officer and you should be learning their language. But the reality is, I've also ridden a whole load of other submarines. So I've ridden Canadians, Italians. I went on a Polish Kilo. I've been on a variety of different nations, and most of them operate in their own language, unless they have English-speaking people on board. And then
do you feel you pick up little tidbits and a little bit of differences in between each Navy that you serve with? Submariners. Generally saying, are they all the same? But you pick up little bits of differences that are to your liking, and it kind of exercises your ability to be a better submariner.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I was so fortunate to do before I took command was to go and see every other, all the nations that I went on board, 12 nations in total, all the other submarine captains that I saw operate, all the other submarine XOs that I saw operate, work out the good, work out the bad, what would I do myself, what could I do myself, because personality comes into it a lot. You see so many similarities, particularly the ethos. The ethos on every submarine is exactly what you'd expect it to be. Submariner first, everything else second. But then tactics are different, equipment's different, and operating procedures are different as well. So you just pull the best out of that and put it into the submarine that you're going to go and lead on.
So I had the pleasure of being on 2 operations there at Naval Ordnance Test Unit Cape Canaveral. I was stationed there, so I did 2 British submarines. Forgive me if I forget the names. It's been so many years ago. But the second one, I got to go out on the actual launch crew for that one. I was the test launch ops super for that one. So I come to really like the style of how, you guys, you're great guys and everything, and we got along, and it was, everything's kind of laid back. But when you go into operation, it's dead serious. And I kind of like that, the differences in the culture. And I also like I've watched the older version, because they had 2 shows about the Perisher from the early 80s. And then I've watched the newer one, which I think was around 2014 or something like that. But, I like the fact how your officers split at some point. I think it's in their first tour, whether they're going to go engineering or they're going to go to the forward part of, which is, weapons and command. So you serve into the command course without, giving too many jibes on it. Like I said, I think there's stark differences in the way you guys command your submarines to your advantage, but I don't know if you would agree or disagree with that. Any comments you might have on that?
Yes, so it's really interesting. When I went to ComSub 12, I think I went in with that premise. I'd passed the Perisher course. It is unique. It's predominantly the best command course in the world and recognized as such. And therefore, I had this predisposition that because all the US officers are engineers first and they go through that there'll be a difference in the way they did it. And what I quickly learned, having observed quite a few submarine command courses whilst I was out there doing the weapon firings in Ortec, was predominantly the courses and your background is not key to it. You're either a really good leader or you're not. And so everything comes down to that particular individual. And if I give you one case in point, and I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning, firstly, John Richardson, most inspirational leader I've ever worked for. Amazing guy. Very, very sound, very calm, the way he operated as ComSub Devon 12. I went to see on board the USS Alexandria quite a few times, actually. And that crew, you could argue that the captain of that boat, and his name is Mike Benacki, he drove it like a Brit would drive it. And he said, I've seen how Brits drive and I can do the same. So I think this comes back to the individual. It's not about your background and how you specialize. It's all about the leadership, the individual concerned, and the teamwork that goes on in a boat.
outstanding statements there. I mean, I really enjoyed those comments. So I saw that. Yeah, I mean, you did an interview with I call him Leadership Jesus, John Rennie. So I mean, I was really glad that you focused on the leadership, because I really think that is a key thing, and I'm glad you reminded and pointed it out. Submariners, yeah, we got all that, but leadership makes a big deal. So thanks. That was good stuff.
So that's gotta kind of mess with Russian captains, right? They're tracking Alexandria. They're thinking this is a Yank, and all of a sudden he starts behaving like a Brit. It's got to kind of mess with them a little bit, doesn't it?
I think even the Russians, I'm fortunate enough to met a few Russian captains, which was a kind of bizarre experience to meet your opposition effectively. But even them, when you look along look at the Russian cadre, there are good captains and there are bad captains, and and I think they look the same as us. It was really interesting meeting them. They were really interested in meeting the submarine. They weren't interested in the submarine. They just wanted to meet the individuals involved. And that tells you a lot about how they look at warfare as well. You fight anybody, you're fighting the individual. You're fighting the individuals on board that submarine. They just have a platform, and it doesn't matter whether it's, when I was on board HMS Turbulent, we went up against some very new submarines, and we were 28 years old, and we still won. And we won because we knew our platform. We were excellent as a team together. I was fortunate to have some absolutely brilliant people who supported and did everything. We were able to make decisions. We devolved decision making all the way down to as much as you could do this. We're a democracy up until a decision was made, and then we'd go off and execute, and that works really, really well.
I think one of the most surreal experiences of my life was about 5 years after I got out. As 1996, I was in Atlanta. The Olympics were going on, and there were a bunch of Russians who came to visit us, one of whom had been a Russian submariner. And just sitting in my office talking to him for like 4 hours. And as you said, talking about personalities and that sort of thing. It was surreal, because I was still in that, you can't talk to Russians, you can't talk about Russians, you can't talk anything about Russia, you can't go to Russia mode, and really strange, but interesting. That's for sure. What'd you like most about being in command of the Turbulent?
If I say most, it was seeing people just do amazing things and get promoted, and how you enable the progression of those people. I think a good one of the captain of HMS Turbulent, when I was on board that, and I was just about to go off to Perisher, and he turned around I remember he was sat in his cabin and he was sat on his hands, and he said, "You wait till you get in command," because he said, if you're doing stuff, you've got it wrong. It's about making sure that everybody else can do stuff, and you jump in when it goes wrong. And those people who go, it's your train set. It's not. It's their submarine. You're just helping them through it. And he was absolutely right. So I went in there with that mindset that I would let everybody find their limits, do as much as they possibly could. And then just seeing people get promoted, seeing people learn and go and do what they wanted to do, that was the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, I like how you said democracy first, and then when a decision has to be made, well, that's when the business gets real. So I respect that. That's the first time I've ever heard that statement. I might borrow that if you don't mind. Did you say? I thought I saw a post earlier. It looked like an old grade school post. It says you're an extrovert, and that's me too. I'm extrovert all day long. I'm stuck, unfortunately, in a land of introverts right now here in Denver, Colorado. No, not to snub them, but coming from the South, we're all extroverts. We're all in each other's business, talky, this stuff. So you're from Sheffield originally, like Def Leppard land type Sheffield?
No, that was HMS Sheffield, which was the Type 22 frigate. So basically, when I was when you leave the Navy, you have the right to ask for all of your reports, and the interesting bit is way back this was right in the 80s, early 90s. They'd give you one report, but they'd write another report about you. So you'd have this generic little bit of paper that said,
"Oh, so you never seen it?
You're doing all right," but you have no idea what they'd written about you. And that changed obviously mid-90s, and it was open reporting. But I asked for all the reports, and it is hilarious reading. So how, and I said this because I always said to myself, and I wrote it in my book, that, you know, the first time I wanted to be a submariner was when I went on board a submarine as a midshipman, and I decided then, and I honestly believed that when I wrote it. But when I read those early reports, it was obvious I didn't know whether I even wanted to stay in the Navy, particularly for the first few years. And then it was only about 2 years into the submarine service, and I settled and said, right, this is it. And then focused, and it's just an interest. So I'm going to put some more of those on Twitter because they are absolutely hilarious what it says about me. So,
yeah, they're kind of hard. They're kind of hardcore. I'm reading. I'm like, it's talking like he's in grade school. I was trying to figure it out, but yeah. So that's interesting. They say one thing to your face and then another one. Then you're able to get the reports later. That's great stuff. Yeah, you got to post more of those. I can't wait to read them.
So you taught other commanding officers, as I understood it. That has to be an interesting experience because you're going to get a lot of different personalities. People are going to come in there who are, you know, willing to learn. You got people who are going to think they know everything already. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so I said, I mean, commanding Turbulent was a really huge responsibility, and it was a responsibility to take my crew to sea, make sure I could bring them back safely and achieve the mission in between. But actually teaching the perisher course was in some ways way more complex than leading your team and going off and doing stuff. And predominantly because you've hit it in one, every single student's got a different personality. And the one thing you don't want to do when you're a teacher is turn around and constrain that. What you want to do is give them the tools, give them the scenarios, give them the benefit of your experience and every other captain that comes and talks and shares and observes, and give them the opportunity to find out where their limits are. And the one person generally who's got to make sure that they operate just slightly outside their limits, but you can pull them back if they need to, is teacher. And so if you've got 6 students on a submarine and every single one is operating differently, honestly, it's like it can be sort of, I was going to say a minefield. That's probably the wrong word, but it can be really tough to work out what people are going to do next, and therefore have a plan in your own head about, if he gets that wrong, this is what I'm going to do to recover the situation. So those last 2 years in the Navy were by far the most challenging 2 years in the Navy. And my responsibility wasn't to the submarine captains at all. It was to the crews that they were going to lead. And so I had it pretty much in my head. The two things that for me, if you can lead well, and I can teach you the rest without a doubt. And I taught a US, I had one US student on the course and one French student during my time. If you can lead well, I'll help you with tactics and everything else, and you've got to look after your team and everything else. But if I see behavior that it indicates that you're not going to look after them, you're not going to pass. And then the second one is make decisions. Too often people procrastinate for one more bit of information, and you don't make a decision. Just make a decision, because the reality is it might not be right, but if it's 60% right, you can find the other 40. And if it's wrong, you can always alter the decision, but do something. And so procrastination or failure to make decisions and poor leadership would make sure you wouldn't pass the course for that.
I found in my own career that I didn't want to be a teacher, as you call it, instructor over here. Didn't want to do it. Fought going. I found that to be almost the most rewarding thing I did, to look at those reports later on down the line, 2, 5, 10 years later, and see the students that I had taught and what they had accomplished later on, to be very satisfying and very rewarding. And I would imagine with a CO course, it would have to be equally as satisfying for you.
Yeah, I think I like the fact that all the people I passed have gone on and commanded, and in fact, 2 of them have been teacher now. So that for me said, I made the correct decisions about who I passed and who I failed. And those guys that failed, and I used to be really key with them, say, because it's a huge thing to fail that course. I mean, it's the end of your submarine career at that point, but it's not the end of your career. All it says is you can't be a submarine captain. You can go do a whole load of other stuff within the Navy, and many of them go on to be captains of frigates. They go on and do other great things. They're admirals, whatever else. But the reality is, for commanding a submarine, there are there are niche skill sets, niche capabilities that you mean that you couldn't do it, but you'll go and do something else. So I'd make sure that once I told them that they failed, that they were looked after, and their careers were progressed in the way that they wanted to.
How does one go from being a submarine captain to become a teacher? I mean, what type of traits is the UK Admiralty looking for a teacher of their prospective submarine captain?
So there's two elements. So I had a bit of a training. So there's almost, you can be operational, but you can also train, you can do strategy, do all those kind of things. I enjoy all of those. But I had a real, I could train people. So during my career, I taught the Submarine Advanced Warfare course at the sub school. I then was a command rider for Flag Officer Sea Training. So I'd go to sea and train up submarine crews. And then just before I was, and basically all of that and my performance on during my command meant that I was selected to be teacher, which was basically my second command appointment.
Good stuff.
Did you choose that, or did they select you?
No, I didn't ask for it. So they choose out of that crop of captains which one they want to teach the next generation.
So you retired after 26 years in the Royal Navy, Her Majesty's Navy. Were you excited by the 75th celebration there?
Yeah. So I think I was quite happy about that.
I'm not much of an Anglophile, but I enjoyed watching. She's a classy lady.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's had mixed responses over here, and I think we're probably coming to the end of that monarchist. Everybody loves the Queen. I'm not certain whether they warm as much to the next generation, effectively. No, so it'd be interesting to see how that all changes over the next 10, 15 years. Whether we go to some model like the Danish or the Dutch, where it doesn't become the central focus, I don't know. But for me, I joined the Navy. I served my Queen. That was who my pledge was to. I'd do the government's bidding, but I would serve the Queen. If she turned around and said to do something different, we would do something different.
I like it. Which the whole point of my question was, you served for 26 years, you retired. What do you do now? What's Ryan do today? So when I decided to leave the Navy, I decided to leave because in my last year in command, every admiral that would come on board would go, just enjoy this, because you're going to go into the MOD and it's going to be real tough work and it's not as much fun as doing this, although I'm sure some of them still have fun. And I turned around and went, do you know what? I want to leave on a high, actually. So I'd like to leave knowing that I'd had the best time ever and that I'd hopefully made a difference to a whole lot of people for the better. And then try something else. What's the next challenge? So initially I decided to get into politics, which was just too much. And I remember Lord Hennessy, who's one of the, he's a brilliant historian. He wrote me a letter turning around and saying, politics needs more people like you, but I don't know why you want to get into it. And he's absolutely right at that point. So then I went to work for Shell, and I was in charge. They had an experiment to see whether you could put, this goes back to, can you lead anything? So I went to Shell, and I put me in charge of a high pressure, high temperature platform in the North Sea, an oil rig effectively. And I led for 2 years on that. Then I went to National Grid, and I was head of construction for National Grid for a while. And all of this has been building to as much business experience as I can before I do what I do now, which is I'm leading a team building electric charge points across the UK. So we have a network across the UK. So yeah, it's all kind of good stuff. And in the middle of all this, you wrote books. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I did. So I wrote the first one, and I'm about halfway through the second one. And I think my publisher's probably had enough of me by now. But the basically when lockdown started, the publisher called up and said, "Hey, do you fancy write?" And I said, "Yeah, I haven't got anything else. It's not like I can go out anywhere." And then I found myself helping lots of people and businesses for free on how to cope with isolation and everything else. And of course, I was still working as well. And then I realized I didn't have any time whatsoever. So I need to create myself some more time to finish it off. I'll finish the second book off.
I saw that you had at least one article that I found about how to cope with the lockdown. And over here, we kind of joked about being submariners. We're used to being locked. That's no big deal to us. You kind of feel the same way. How do you translate that to the people you were dealing with who weren't submariners?
So there was almost three different elements to this, and I only worked it out after the first couple of talks I gave. So the first group were leaders. So leaders were struggling with disparate leadership, I'd call it. Your people are working from home. How do you know that they're doing what you want them to do? And so getting people to accept that, task orientated, make sure you give them tasks and do it that way. But you have to have trust. And then equally, there was people being found out. So senior leaders were saying to me, this guy who we thought was a great head of is actually useless. And he's now been found out because of this, and this. And how do we handle that? And how do you give coaching? You can't give one-to-one coaching. So is there any way you can help with it? So that dealt with the leaders thing. And then you had groups, families that were stuck together, and sometimes in very small environments, which is really, really, really tough, as well as trying to work and what is trying to. So I gave you some guidance about how to do that. And then possibly the hardest one for me to deal with was those that were just on their own. And the young person who's bought an apartment and didn't really intend to live in that apartment in London, just intended to be out doing whatever and use it to sleep, and is now locked away in this apartment for over 100 days. And so my big bit was the first question that would come back at the beginning of lockdown was, hey, how long is this going to last? And I'd go, well, plan forever. And they go, well, why it'll be over in a couple of weeks? I said, yeah, but you'll be really disappointed if it's not. So plan for at least 100 days. And luckily I was about right with the time, because it was just over 100 days. But that whole, it was three different models to help people in three different situations, which seemed to work.
It seems like it's helped leaders transform themselves to make better leaders, because there's a lot of leadership skills that are learned in person in the office. And then they had the chance to, kind of just wait around a little bit and then at the at distance type leadership. So I enjoyed watching people gain those leadership skills too, because I think it's important to focus more, like what you said, on the people. It's like, trust the people. You've said a lot of great things that I agree with, that unfortunately a lot of leaders are not just getting yet, but I think they're starting to get it now, which COVID has been a transformative period, which I think is good for everybody. So I really enjoyed that.
I do think probably that, just while we're on the leadership thing, that the biggest challenge for most leaders now, because there's some really great leadership out there, particularly in the UK I'm going to talk about, but in the UK there's some great leadership. There's also some absolutely poor leadership going on. And the reality is we live in this post-truth era, and it's really difficult for leaders with the right values and everything else to lead in that particular area. And I think eventually we'll overcome it. In the next year or 2 years, we'll overcome that, and hopefully the political tone is set properly. That leadership will lever into the business world a bit better, and we'll be in a better position. But I think leadership in this century is extremely difficult, and this decade is harder than it's ever been.
I got to go back, Dave. I just want to go back just for a second, because you said you led an oil rig, and that, being from the South, Gulf of Mexico, oil rigs were dotted all over the place. Not so much anymore. What was that like? Because they say it's like roughnecks. These guys are like hardcore, very focused on themselves and their abilities. That had to have been a challenge to lead those type of individuals. Yes.
So I think I found that, and I've loved all of the challenges in the business world, because the first thing is, turning up on the oil rig, and I did all my training, obviously. So I did, they gave me 9 months to train. I finished it in 3, and because obviously I wasn't leaving till I finished it. And then you found you go on board, and of course they go brand new to the oil industry, doesn't know anything, and they're right. I didn't know very much about that, but I can lead. And so the guy that I took over from, really great guy, very technically orientated, 27 years in the oil industry, 8 years on that particular platform. And so what you'd have is the ops supervisor coming in and saying, hey, sir, hey, Ryan, sorry, not sir. Hey, Ryan, we've got a problem with K2420. We think it's valve this. What should we do? And I'm looking at him going, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? What do you think you should do?
Yeah.
It's like, I can't give you the answer to this. I can help you through the process, but you guys need to fix it. So you go do it, and just have confidence. So you're going to go fix this stuff, and they did. So I think what they got was initially they go, who is this guy coming here? And then quickly they warmed and went, okay, we like how he operates, and we can deal with him.
Tested you out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of figured that. Yeah, that sounds about right. That's what. Yeah, Dave, what you got?
I got a couple more questions for you, but first I wanted to point out the shirt that Eric is wearing. If you haven't seen that yet, you'll notice that it's a black T-shirt that says the Subvet on,
and it's got the Submariner ethos on the back. So,
and if you're watching me drink, you'll notice that I have my Subvet coffee cup. Eric, tell everybody where they can get their Subvet merchandise.
So if you go on the subvet.com, and I'm trying to add something a little bit every day, the subvet.com, you'll see the merch for the Subvet. You click on that, that'll bring you to a Zazzle page. And the thing I like about Zazzle was recommended by a submariner that's been in the business since the 80s, the merchandise business, and he does USSVI and all that kind of stuff. Dave, I think you might know him. Bear
well.
Yeah. So yeah, he recommended that, and I like the fact that you can change a few things too. If you want to add something, it lets you do that. So yeah, you go on there, helps out the Subvet, and helps us grow. And and you can wear some great merch, and then help advertise what we're doing here and the great podcasting that we're doing right now, and hope to have it in the future.
Pretty quick too. It only took about 3 days to get my cup. I got a couple of things I want to listening to you talk. And I make notes. I'm a copious note taker. There's a couple of questions I want to ask you in the vein of leadership, I guess. You mentioned the political climate, the post-truth climate that we're in on really both sides of the Atlantic, I would say. As a submariner, do you see your leadership model, our leadership model, evolving into solving that post-truth political environment? And if so, what can people like me do, or like Eric do, to help our leaders to accomplish that?
So I think the submarine model of leadership is fantastic, without a doubt, and it's proven itself, because on board a submarine, there is no place for that dishonesty, particularly because the consequence is fatality. And so everybody has to be honest. Those boats where you've heard of, people are starting to hide things, the command climate's wrong, everything else, you guys do it way quicker than we would, but you get rid of the leadership team and you bring new people in. And that's the great book, David Marquette's Turn This Ship Around. It talks a lot about how that I felt a bit sorry for the CO before David Marquette, to be fair, but because I wouldn't like to be the topic of that book. But he's right. That's, he went on board, he turned it around, and that's exactly what you need to do in those particular cases. And then there's another bit that says, if it's not broken, don't try and change it massively. So if it's in a really good state, all you're doing is you're carrying that responsibility going forward. But probably the biggest thing I think that the submarine leadership world can bring over to, particularly the political world, but in some cases the business world, is the selfless servant leadership. I think we go on board to serve. That's what we do, and it's all about the crew first, yourself second. And what you find a lot in the business world, and definitely within the political world, is that it's all about self-serving. And that's the bit that's I find really disappointing. And particularly if you look at some of the politicians on the UK side that have gone from the military into the political world, and you've watched them transition into this self-serving piece because they've been influenced so much by the environment they live in. And sometimes I think that needs to be reset, and the submarine service is very good at doing that.
That's where I wanted to get you to, because you are a commander. My XO is now an admiral, and I have regular conversations with him and stuff like that. And one of the things I'm most uncomfortable with, and I'll tell you, I had to write myself a big note here: don't call him sir.
Yeah, don't.
Because there's an element here, and I get the formality of the military, and I get the formality of the Navy and the purpose for that. But you're right about this self-service and servant attitude kind of thing, because most of our politicians want us, on both sides, want us to be obsequiously kneeling to them and to refer to them that way. And you have a different attitude towards that. You tell people, again, I wrote it in my notes, don't call him sir. Why?
Yeah. Because it's the sir bit is, I mean, let's just come back to the politics bit. Politicians are supposed to serve us. That's why they're elected, to serve the people. And they forget that. And that's really bad. With regards to titles and stuff like that, some people get off on titles. You know, you see retired majors and they want to be called major whoever, and retired lieutenant colonels want to be called lieutenant colonel, even though they've left ages ago. It was just a title. And the reality was, you know, we had rank and structure and everything else. I lead a team now. Nobody ever calls me sir, boss, whatever else. They just call me Ryan. And that doesn't change that I'm the guy who's serving them as leader. It just means that the titles and everything else are not necessary.
So, I mean, for me, it's scripturally based. Going back a couple thousand years, I mean, it's several places. It says in the scriptures too, serve the people that you lead. And it's like it's not old hat. It's just like somewhere people get off. And I think that's it oscillates throughout time. Maybe some people, some leaders get to where they are serving, and then they want you to kind of kneel to them, like Dave was saying. So, yeah, man, this is great stuff. You have anything else you want to add or plug about what you're doing out there these days, and what great stuff you're bringing to? You probably do any community projects or anything like that?
Yeah, so well, I do quite a bit to help veterans transition into the civilian life, and I think we forget that you've got a brilliant. You look after your veterans very well in the US. I know I saw it firsthand when I was out there for 2 years. It was amazing, and we don't. Frankly, we just don't. We haven't. And some of the stories you see, you've almost got this. There's two pots. There's veterans that leave and they move into business and they just settle. And then there's a whole load of people that just don't settle with it. And therefore, so if I can help anybody on that journey, I will. If I can employ people, I will employ them and help them through that, you know, help them to make that transition, because it's huge. You're giving up a huge part of your life at that. And it is institutionalized, without a doubt. You are institutionalized by the time you leave. And so readjustment is really, really quite a tough thing to do. And I say it myself. I said, you know, 5 years after I left, and I'm in year 7 now, but 5 years after I left, even I was having a bit of, I really miss it and want to go back to it because this is really tough out here. And then you sit down and you go, that was history and it was brilliant and I loved it. And I always want to remember it for being absolutely brilliant. But you got to keep going forward and carry on and make a difference. So if I can share things, you know, people learn from my mistakes, people learn from what I've learned. If they can lever off my network, they can. I do all of that for them. And then on another bit is coaching and mentoring. So I sit on I chair actually a small company called Future Leaders, and basically they provide mentoring and coaching to people in the energy sector to help them on the leadership journey. And then probably the final one is that I'm the chair of Plymouth Argyle, which is a football club, and I'm the chairman of their community trust. So not the football club itself, that'd be really nice, but the community trust is brilliant, because what that does for Plymouth, Cornwall, Devon is absolutely incredible. The difference it makes for people's lives is amazing.
He is the future MP from Stratford-on-Avon. Or maybe not.
I don't think he's going to be getting into politics. I mean, the problem with getting into politics is when you lead like us, it kind of offends people around them. So, you know, they're like, no, who's this guy coming up talking like this? And people like him. We don't like that. You know, we don't like that style.
I've gotten that for years. I get that for years. Dave, why don't you run for office? I can't. Say something.
I might do it one day.
I think you should. There's got to be something special about being the MP from Stratford-on-Avon.
I don't think I'd win here though. So I know that for a fact. So and it wouldn't be here that I'd want to do it. I'd want to be an MP where you could really make a difference to it. Stratford-upon-Avon is a brilliant place. It's really nice, but it's set. There's not much you're going to change and not much you need to. You want to go to an area where it's really needs help and you can really push agendas and make sure that you can push the local agenda into the national debate. And I think that's where I'd make the most difference.
All right, Ryan Ramsey, tell us where people can get a hold of you if they want to, or if they can read your books or get your lectures, whatever they want to do.
Sure. So the book is called SSN-4. I should have held a copy up. The book is called SSN-14, which is Submerged Ship Nuclear 14. All the profits go to charity. I don't take any money for that. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn. And my Twitter handle is SSN14CO. And Ryan Ramsey. You can Google and you'll find me.
Outstanding. And I'm Eric from the subvet.com. And
I
you can,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I say you can email me at eric@subvet.com. You could get our social media group too. So Dave Dave, say the Facebook group, please.
Facebook.com/groups. Just look for groups called The Subvet. I will tell you, however, if you're going to join the Subvet, you must agree to the group rules. If you do not agree to the group rules, I will decline your invitation because I like doing that.
Family site. That's all you got to think. Family site. That's why we got rules, not to corner anybody. And last show, I did not hold this up. I meant to do it for my brother. He sent me this artifact he found from when I was in the shipyard decomming the Henry L. Stimson from many years ago, 92, 93. So thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Got to clean this up. I don't want to get, it's like an old car or an old gun. What do they call that? You don't want to get the
nostalgia.
Yeah, do I really want to clean it up or just a little bit? Or there's actually a term for that. Anyways, that's where you can find us, and I appreciate you, Ryan, for being on the show with us. Great stuff. Loved all the leadership stuff. I mean, it's kind of I'm in the same boat with you. Not to say submarines are better than anything, but I think the key point to take away is serve first. Always serve first. The magic happens.
So we are better. Thank you, Ryan. It's been great having you here today. Really enjoyed that.
So much for having me. Appreciate that.
So, Eric, are we going to try this again? Are we ready?
I'm going to count to 3 and
by the way,
keep your cadence.
Hang on. I'm Dolphin. You can get me at DolphinDave at slipperyfish.com or my website, plausiblylive.com. Just like it sounds. All right. Count us down.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
The Subvet.
It's closer.
You're absolutely never going to get that right.